Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahans Parikacharya Astotra AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahans Parikacharya Astotra Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Swami Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय. नामाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की जय. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय. श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोधाम की जय. वृंदावन धाम की जय. मथुरा धाम की जय. मायापुर नदी धाम की जय. जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय. गंगा मई की जय. तुलसी देवी की जय. गंगा मई जमुना मई की जय. तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय. समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Always Shri Guru and Gauranga.
Jai, Jai, Jai. Thank you so much, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And thank you everyone for being here for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. It is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024 in New York. And we're starting tonight with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 33, Text 13. And let's see, I was going to see whether Panchatattva Prabhu might be our first reader this evening. Is that okay?
Sure. 13?
13.
Sachapi taniyoktena yogadesena yukta yogadesena yoga yuk tasmin ashrama apide sarasvatya samahita. Translation. As instructed by her son, Devahuti also began to practice bhakti yoga in that very ashram. She practiced samadhi in the house of Kardama Muni, which was so beautifully decorated with flowers that it was considered the flower crown of the river Saraswati. Purport. Devahuti did not leave her house because it is never recommended for a woman to leave her home. She is dependent. The very example of Devahuti was that when she was not married, she was under the care of her father, Swayambhuva Manu. And then Swayambhuva Manu gave her to Kardama Muni in charity. She was under the care of her husband in her youth. And then her son, Kapila Muni, was born. As soon as her son grew up, her husband left home. And similarly, the son, after discharging his duty towards his mother, also left. She could also have left home, but she did not. Rather, she remained at home and began to practice bhakti yoga, as it was instructed by her great son, Kapila Muni. Because of her practice of bhakti yoga, the entire home became just like a flower crown on the river Saraswati. Om Ajnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksho Malitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, my first impression from the verse is that Srimati Devahuti was very advanced, because in the very second sentence of the translation, it said that she practiced samadhi in the house of Kardama Muni. And in the purport, it's mentioned at the end of the purport that because of the practice of bhakti yoga, the entire home became just like a flower crown on the river Saraswati. There are scriptural instructions for the four varnas and ashrams. There are scriptural injunctions for how men and women should pass their life and engaged in their material and spiritual duties. And here we're reminded that women should be under the protection of their fathers, their husbands, and their sons throughout their lives. But we can take note of the fact that Devahuti was engaged in following these instructions, as were her protectors, but that does not mean that she did not make spiritual advancement. She is a very advanced devotee, as is made very clear in this verse, so much so that it transformed the environment around her. It became very spiritualized. So that's a salient point to take, that no one is restricted from making spiritual advancement, provided they take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, receive proper instruction, and render service and follow those instructions very carefully. Man, woman, whatever varna, whatever ashram, be engaged in your duties, but take to spiritual life very seriously. Throughout the pages of the third canto, we've seen, we've heard from Kapila Dev, but we've also seen the wonderful example set by Devahuti, her mother. She asked pertinent questions. She received the answers. Some of in different places, she went on to ask further questions. She regarded her son with great respect, and she took the instructions from Lord Kapila Dev as her life and soul, and therefore she was able to surmount the normal entanglement of material nature and become a very advanced devotee. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Maharaj, would you care to comment?
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shamiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtachadesha. It's interesting to note that Prabhupada picks up this theme of protection for women, and it's interesting that he's not concessional. There's not, of course, in our modern day Krishna consciousness movement, he just gives the same traditional teaching that he consistently gives throughout his books. I found that noteworthy. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Praveen Krishna Prabhu mentions, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions in text 12 that she was protected by his will, by Kapila Dev's will, although he left. Thanks for bringing that out.
Yeah, Kapil Dev being an supreme personality of Godhead, yes, for sure. By his will, she was protected, yes.
And I was going to ask, but the question seems to be answered, but by subsequent verses, what Devahuti's situation was, whether she was still living in the same palace, and apparently she was. But Mahesh Pandit Prabhu, would you like to read our next verse?
Yeah, sure. Number 14. Abhikshanavagaha kapishan jatilan kutila lakan atmanam chograp tapasa vibrati chirinam krusham. She began to bath 3 times daily, and thus her curling black hair gradually became gray. Due to austerity, her body gradually became thin, and she wore old garments. Purport. It is the practice of the yogi, brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyasi to bath at least 3 times daily, early in the morning, during noontime, and in the evening. These principles are strictly followed even by some grihastha, especially brahmanas, who are elevated in spiritual consciousness. Devahuti was a king's daughter and almost a king's wife also. Although Kandama Muni was not a king, by his yogi mystic power, he accommodated Devahuti very comfortably in a nice palace with maidservant and all opulence. But since she had learned austerity, even in the presence of her husband, there was no difficulty for her to be austere. Still, because her body underwent severe austerity after the departure of her husband and son, she became thin. To be too fat is not very good for spiritually advanced life. Rather, one should reduce, because if one becomes fat, it is an impediment to progress in spiritual understanding. One should be careful not to eat too much, sleep too much, or remain in a comfortable position. Voluntarily accepting some penance and difficulties, one should take less food and less sleep. These are the procedures for practicing any kind of yoga, whether Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Hatha Yoga. So after her son Kapil Dev left, she continued to practice her bhakti yoga in the palace. And it's interesting, wherever there is a Krishna's name or chanting of Hare Krishna and various spiritual activities, the house becomes, or the palace becomes like a temple. So she made her residence as a temple because of her practicing in that place bhakti yoga. Yeah. It's interesting, 3 times a day to bath. It's practical in India, actually. Over here also, whenever we have to do some service in temple, we take a bath and then enter the altar. It's a cleanliness, and then you also become clean inside and outside. Oma pavitro pavitro va sarva sagatopi va yasmare kundari kaksha sabahyam antarya suchi. Even there is no facilities. If you just remember the lotus side Krishna, you become suchi or clean inside and outside just by remembrance. So it's so powerful. The remembrance of Krishna is so powerful. Okay, what else we have? Yeah, you have to voluntarily accept some penances. Not to eat too much, not to sleep too much. Just regulate life, and then bhakti yoga becomes very easy. And due to that, her body gradually became thin, and she wore old garments. Very nice. So this is a practical example for us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, would you care to say something?
Yeah, there's several points. One is it's notable that she took up this austerity by virtue of having practiced it before. So that's it indicates that this is the kind of training that every human being is meant to have, to be trained in austerity, particularly those who are Brahmins, but everyone. Brahmachari Guru Kule Basantanta Guru Hitam. Now it's like children have a right to play. They should play for their whole childhood. They should play and play. But in the Vedic system, they learn austerity. That's part of becoming a cultured and serious human being, to undergo some practice of austerity. So Devahuti had undergone austerity in the company of Gardamuni. That's also how one learns austerity, in the company of those who are austere. So she was able to continue an austere way of life because she'd been trained. It's harder for those who are not trained. Austerity doesn't come as a natural way of life. Those who are trained, they get used to it. But all right, this is what we do. We take bath 3 times a day. We undergo various inconveniences. We do without this. We do without that. And we're happy. But those who live a whole life of being pampered and comfortable and entitled to every kind of thing they want to buy, for them it will be more difficult. So that's one point, that training. Another point is that the Prabhupada makes this point that she became thin, which is good. To be fat in spiritual life isn't very good. I remember there was one brahmachari who was interested in taking sannyas, and Prabhupada said, he is not fit, he is fat. He is not fit, he is fat. So he rejected the candidacy. And Srila Prabhupada comments elsewhere in Caitanya-caritamrta, I think, that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was not very happy to see his sannyasi disciples becoming fat. Not a good sign, because sannyas is meant for austerity, and luxurious eating or big eating is not consistent with that kind of life. Nidrahara viharakadi vijito. The Goswamis conquered eating, sleeping. There was no question of mating. So this is good for the sannyasis and good for the vanaprasthas also, since I'm doing research and writing about vanaprasthas. Just last night we were reading in the 16th chapter, the divine qualities. Tapa is meant especially for the vanaprasthas. It's not that they just retire to a comfortable villa somewhere and live. Even Devahuti, she was living in a better than a villa, a palace, but you can see how she's living austerely in spite of having all the opportunities for comfortable life. Of her own volition, she was living austerely. So the sannyasis, vanaprasthas, practice to undergo some voluntary inconvenience. That's how Prabhupada defined tapasya, voluntary inconvenience. The inconvenience comes on its own, that's one thing. But those who are serious about spiritual life accept some voluntary inconvenience. Quite the point. And particularly Prabhupada mentions eating here. Shouldn't eat too much, shouldn't sleep too much, shouldn't remain in a very comfortable position. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a sannyasi wouldn't accept even a mattress from Jagadananda Pandit.
Mhm.
No, it's my duty as a sannyasi to live austerely. So these, and particularly Prabhupada mentions becoming fat. Not good. Not good. See if there's anything else. And in any yoga system, and so bhakti yoga also, not that bhakti yoga is, in other forms of yoga you should curtail your eating, but in bhakti yoga we eat extravagantly. No. We should control our eating also, which is sometimes hard. Everyone wants to, especially sannyasis, everyone wants to offer them nice food and take more. But so it requires some practice and some willingness. No, it's my duty to eat a little simply. Not that because I'm being offered all kinds of luxurious and opulent food, I should move from feast to feast, eating very nicely. That's not good for us. When we eat luxuriously, the senses become more powerful. And when the senses become more powerful, our ability to control them becomes less powerful. So for those who've adopted renounced life, that can be a disaster. When we need to control the senses, we can't control them because they've gotten too strong. So this cutting down on eating makes the senses less powerful and therefore more controllable. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. Saraswati
And
Mata.
therefore we have 2 Ekadashis per month. That helps us,
Thank you, Prabhu. And Saraswati Mata says, Pranams, it's stated here how Devahuti wore old clothes, which is recommended for a woman living without her husband to not dress herself nicely. And she says, regarding how it is important for a devotee to reduce eating so as not to become overweight, but sometimes it's due to a medical condition like thyroid problems that a person may not actually eat much, but can end up overweight.
Yes.
And Prabhu Krishna Prabhu says, trained at austerity at the beginning, then controlled sense gratification, and again austerity at the end. Is this format set in Varnashram for every man and woman, or just Brahmins?
Well, the Shudras will not be so educated and trained, but it's good for everyone. I remember I was in Vrindavan. I was just walking in Vrindavan, and it was, I don't think it was the middle of the winter, but it was cold. And there was some man bathing his son under the pump, and the kid was wailing. Ah! Yeah, the father went on, just this is this is it. Caitanya-caritamrta mentioned also that in Holland it's like the mothers are not very indulgent. They're like stern. Uh, so that's consistent with the Vedic approach. That from the age of 5, these they should be trained, and that your life is not meant for having all your whims satisfied, having all your desires fulfilled, having that you live like a little prince. You're our little prince, and we want to make sure that nothing is denied you for your happiness. That's not really in the best interests of the. And we see that the result is that sometimes young people grow up in such an environment, and then they become like rotten. They often they turn their back, because it doesn't satisfy them living like that, and then they turn their back on it, or they expect that throughout their life they'll be, everybody's going to give them what they're entitled to because they're so important. So to be trained in an austere way of life is good not only for the Brahmins but in general for everyone.
Maharaj, I had a question here. It says, well, first, just a short anecdote. I had very lucky to be in my early years in ISKCON to have a lot of association traveling with sannyasis. And one of them I asked one time, just trying to ask him a serious spiritual question, Maharaj, how do I know if I'm doing well in spiritual life? And he just sort of quickly looked me up and down and said, you're pretty skinny. I think you're doing okay. But this statement of Prabhupada here, one should be careful not to eat too much, sleep too much, or remain in a comfortable position. Obviously, everyone's unique with unique needs and prakrutis and everything like that. But are the austerities meant to be prescribed individually by spiritual master? It doesn't seem like something one should do whimsically, because even Krishna says you eat too much, eat too little, it's not good.
Yeah, I remember there was a time when Yadubara Prabhu was following some regimen of very restricted eating, and Prabhupada, it was all sort of health related, and Prabhupada just blew him out of the water. No, you should take nice prasada. Prabhupada also didn't like seeing his disciples with starving faces and skinny and unfit for work. He liked to see that they're healthy, but not fat. So, not, what is that in the Bhagavad Gita? In the, that's Tapyate ye tapojana dambha ankara samyukta kamaraga balanvita karshayanta shariras tam bhutagrama macheta saha mam traivanta shriras tam vidhyasura nishchayam. The demons torture the body, and Krishna even says they're torturing me, because he himself is sorry to see someone suffering like that needlessly. So we're not meant for that kind of austerity, at least not without, as you said, the approval of the spiritual master. If one is going to undergo severe austerities, then the spiritual master's approval or approval of senior Vaishnavas should be sought. I know Prabhupada deprecated people who were sort of whimsically following, or by their own notions, following some sort of chaturmasya vow. They would grow a beard and they would do this and that, but they wouldn't follow the whole system. And it was just sort of whatever it was, but Prabhupada didn't approve. And we know that other example that one devotee was following Ekadasi, and Bhakti Siddhanta said, no, send him out and feed him and send him out to preach. So it's not just all about austerity. But then again, the Goswamis we hear, they Vitapa Sri Yukta Vrindavane, they underwent severe austerities. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur undertook severe austerities. So, yes, as you said, these things should be done under proper guidance so that one doesn't wind up doing something harmful, pretentious, or otherwise unsuitable for advancement in Krishna consciousness. Everything should be guided by authority.
I was just talking to one of your godbrothers earlier today, Maharaj, and he was relating this very topic to some advice he received when he broke a bone. His physical therapist said, there's comfort zone, stretching zone, and panic zone. Comfort zone means you're just going to get worse. Your condition is not going to improve. Panic zone means you're doing too much, you're going to harm yourself. That's not going to help you. Stretching zone is what you want.
Right.
And Anantashesha Prabhu says, old-fashioned tough love parenting has become obsolete. Saraswati Mata says, my 95-year-old father had to travel on a plane for some medical reasons. And when I tried to book him in business class, he refused, saying his mind will always want more. This mind will always want more and will tempt you more. So be careful with this, even if you can afford this type of, quote, luxury. And Anantashesha Prabhu says, very true. I traveled once that way and now I'm hankering for more. Prabhin Krishna Prabhu says, one aging Grihastha told me that he had started his spiritual life at the temple for quite a few years, but slowly he went to some sense gratification. After 25 years with his life in problems, he now thinks he wants to end his life where he had, quote, started. And I also found myself thinking, hearing the description of Devahuti Mataji, how a person might read this about her performing austerities and think, well, it's not so hard for her because look, she's in a really nice palace. You perform severe austerities in a nice palace. It's like me living comfortably in a very humble situation. It's kind of balances out.
It's harder to perform austerities in a very nice palace. You're in a hut somewhere. What else are you going to do? When you're living in a very nice palace, performing austerities is contrary to the environment.
Yeah. Radhesha Prabhu, wait. Yes, Radhesha Prabhu, could you read our next verse?
Yeah, that last statement just made me think real renunciation is that in the face of temptation, still you're renounced. Otherwise, if it's just withheld from you, that's cheating renunciation. I also had the thought. I think, Maharaj, you were mentioning earlier that voluntary austerity. It reminded me of when Ram went to the forest. You have Lakshman and Sita going with him, but Bharat stayed back. He had all the facilities, but voluntarily he was going through the same sacrifice, the same austerity, and it's so nice. The other thing that was just a sweet memory when I saw Jatilan Kapishan. I saw the second I saw Kapisha, the first thing that came to my head was Barha Pidam Natavaravappu Karneo Karnikaram Bibrad Basa Kapisha. That Kanaka Kapisha, that the Lord's cloth is yellowish. And so then I thought, oh, how can it both be, the beautiful yellow color of Krishna's dhoti and also, a gray color of old ladies, or not old, but the severe austerities of Devahuti, or hair turning that color. And so I looked it up, and Kapisha covers a whole range of colors: tawny, brown, gray, yellow. So anyway, some thoughts. Text 15. Prajapati kardamasya tapo yoga vijrimbhitam svagarhastyam anaupam yam prarthyam vaimanikairapi. The home and household paraphernalia of Kardama, who was one of the Prajapatis, was developed in such a way by dint of his mystic powers of austerity and yoga that his opulence was sometimes envied by those who travel in outer space in airplanes. The statement in this verse that Kardama Muni's household affairs were envied even by persons who travel in outer space refers to the denizens of heaven. Their airships are not like those we have invented in the modern age, which fly only from one country to another. Their airplanes were capable of going from one planet to another. There are many such statements in the Srimad Bhagavatam from which we can understand that there were facilities to travel from one planet to another, especially in the higher planetary system. And who can say that they are not still traveling? The speed of our airplanes and space vehicles is very limited, but as we have already studied, Kardama Muni traveled in outer space in an airplane which was like a city, and he journeyed to see all the different heavenly planets. That was not an ordinary airplane, nor was it ordinary space travel. Because Kardama Muni was such a powerful mystic yogi, his opulence was envied by the denizens of heaven. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Gurudasa Jayadvaita Swami Namne Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalake Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namo. Interesting direction Srila Prabhupada takes this. He just jumped on the Vaimanikai, by the denizens of heaven, their systems of traveling. Vimana, their airplanes were something spectacular. So Srila Prabhupada takes this opportunity to describe the space travel, which sort of mocks our system. We're discussing the difference between economy class and business class. These pale by comparison to a flying city or the amazing airplanes of the denizens of heaven. And yet all of these wonderful facilities, still they were envious, or at least we hear that Kardama Muni's situation was enviable, even by them. So we can imagine the level of opulence available to Devahuti. And brought to my mind was a verse maybe we said a couple weeks ago, Aradhito yadi haris tapasa tata kim. What is the need of austerity if you're worshiping the Lord? What is the need of austerity if you're not worshiping, if you see him within and without, if you don't see him within and without? And I was thinking for Devahuti, maybe another one of the differences when we see the verse in Bhagavad Gita, Yukta hara viharasya, Yukta cheshtasya karmasya, Yukta swapna bodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha, that the purpose is to reduce material misery. Whereas if you're torturing Paramatma within, if you're torturing your material condition, or performing austerity while the mind continues to meditate on the objects of the senses, mityachara suchyate. So I was thinking down these lines that for Devahuti, there was no contradiction in her austerity and the performance of her devotional service. Whereas perhaps for some of us, when we're performing these austerities, it's at the detriment. In the example Maharaj gave of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada's encouraging the preaching movement, it's at the detriment of the preaching movement if we're just self-absorbed in our austerities, meditating on how much nicer it would be to have nice facilities. So we have a beautiful process given us where we're not capable of such amazing austerities. Elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam, maybe it's Narada Muni describing it. What devotee is capable of such austerities as Hiranyakashipu? The devotees are not capable of it, nor have we a need for it. Our austerities are given, are what is that? Mahajano yenakata sapantaha. We follow in the footsteps of the great acharyas, what they've given us. That will be the process by which we can best advance, not concocting or speculating. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very pleased with him when he brought him grains, and immediately he ate them with an unwashed mouth. And Mahaprabhu said, okay, you've understood. And we're not overly attached to Vedic rituals, to some sort of personal austerity, self-aggrandizement. No, it's what the Acharya recommends, what the Supreme Lord recommends, then that will take. When the devotees came to Jagannath Puri, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was explaining to King Prataparudra why they immediately sat down and began eating. They weren't performing austerities. They weren't fasting for that day. They weren't, shaving up. They immediately came and ate Jagannath Mahaprasad because the Lord invited them. So our process is to follow what the Acharyas state. And here, although Srila Prabhupada doesn't directly address, let's see. No, he does. Just Srila Prabhupada takes the purport a different route, discussing our air travel. And maybe Maharaj, you can comment to that. Perhaps there was something to do with the modern political climate in terms of space travel and traveling to the moon. And who knows that Srila Prabhupada felt the need to focus on that aspect.
I don't really have more to comment on that. Why he chose to comment on Vimanas and so on. It was obviously a frequent topic for him, but I don't have anything special to add.
Okay. Speaking of Vimanas, Venkatesh Prabhu shares a link for an interesting seminar series by the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies in Florida on Parallels or Alien Identities book by Sadhuputa Prabhu every couple of weeks on Saturdays. Details are in the chat window. Thanks on that. And Madhupati Prabhu is here. Would you like to read our next text, number 16?
Okay, let me try. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutala Gurudas Jayadvaita Swami Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutala Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Deve Kauravani Pacharani Sesanyavadi Pashate Shadari Payafena Nibaya Saya Danta Rukma Parichadaha Asanani Cha Haimani Shusparsha Astaranani cha. The opulence of the household of Kardama Muni is described herein. The bed sheets and mattresses were all as white as the foam of milk. The chairs and benches were made of ivory and were covered by clothes of lace with golden filigree. And the couches were made of gold and had very soft pillows. The next verse. Swacha Swatika Kudyesu Maha Marketa Sucha Ratna Padipa Abhanti Lala Na Ratna Samyuta. The walls of the house were made of first-class marble, decorated with valuable jewels. There was no need of light, for the household was illuminated by the rays of these jewels. The female members of the household were all amply decorated with jewelry. Perfect. It was understood from this statement that the opulences of household life were exhibited in valuable jewels, ivory, first-class marble, and furniture made of gold and jewels. The clothes are also mentioned as being decorated with golden filigree. Everything actually had some value. It was not like the furniture of the present day, which is cast in valueless plastic or base metal. The way of Vedic civilization is that whatever was used in household affairs had to be valuable. In case of need, such items of value could be exchanged immediately. Thus, once broken and unwanted furniture and paraphernalia would now be without value. This system is still followed by Indians in household affairs. They keep metal utensils and golden ornaments, or silver plates and valuable silk garments with golden embroidery. And in case of need, they can have some money in exchange immediately. There are exchanges for the moneylenders and the householders. Om Agdanativinandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshunatanyena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Yes, the opulences of which talks about the opulences of Lord Kapila, where let me go back to the chapter. Activities of Lord Kapila. So the opulences of Lord Kapila were how the opulences of Kadamuni, the home and household paraphernalia of Kadamuni, is been described here, where they were all made of first-class marble decorated with valuable jewels, right? And various opulences are mentioned, and Srila Prabhupada makes this nice analogy where in the present day, many of these furnitures are made of plastic and metal, which when it becomes defective, it becomes completely useless, and people keep it in the trash. But in the Vedic times, all the utensils and furnitures were also made of valuable items, so that at any time the household life is in difficulty, they can exchange it and get money for it. Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I had to say for this.
Thank you, Madhupati Prabhu. Maharaj, would you care to speak on these?
I think Madhupati Prabhu's covered it. It's just interesting to see how we have an advanced civilization that accumulates things with plates that are made of plastic and everything that's made of plastic, and clothing that's made of plastic, plates that are made of plastic, everything more or less useless. And here we have at least a hint of a civilization where things that were used had an intrinsic value, and there's a sense to it also. It's almost foreign to our modern way of life. It's interesting that we're such a rich civilization and everything's plastic. Hare Krishna.
All right, Krishna. Yes, Maharaj, I was thinking as you were speaking how the so-called richness of the civilization is it's Maya. It's all for appearance's sake, but it has no, as you say, intrinsic value, whereas it seems that there was a lot of more thought put into where wealth goes in a more enlightened culture. Saraswati Mata says, I'm surprised to see ivory listed here, as this may involve killing an animal like an elephant. I have seen necklaces made with nails from lions or tigers too, but I thought these types of items sourced from killing is unclean or sinful.
It's certainly not consistent with modern ecological sensibilities, we can say that. But in many places in Vedic literature, we find ivory mentioned. One thing, of course, is that it wasn't a civilization where just elephants were slain willy-nilly for their tusks, but these were, what would you say? They were valuable in one sense because they were rare. Not that they were, everybody has ivory because we just this is what we do for our business. We kill elephants and harvest their tusks. Can't say very much more than that.
Thank you, Maharaj. Panchatattva Prabhu comments, they didn't pollute the entire world, even rainfall, with microplastics 5,000 years ago.
Yeah, that's not really an answer. That's an other things are worse kind of answer. It's true, but it doesn't really explain the question of why they were using these things.
And Shara has a very short but enigmatic comment. People are plastic.
Yes.
Saraswati Mata says, as predicted, in a materialistic civilization, now problems to recycle plastic is a major problem.
You are what you eat off of.
Krishna. Praveen Krishna Prabhu says, Mr. Singh brought Prabhupada and his disciples before his prize trophy, a large tiger's head. Prabhupada approached closely. You have killed this? He asked. Yes, Mr. Singh replied, and he described the details of the hunt. The man-eater had killed many people in a nearby village, Mr. Singh explained, so I went and shot it. Prabhupada's eyes widened and he turned to his disciples. Oh, very nice. Hare Krishna. And more on the seminar series from the Bhaktivedanta Institute from Venkatesh Prabhu. They discuss UFOs and advanced technology vimanas reported by the U.S. Air Force pilots, etc., even in modern times, as mentioned in verse 15, purport. Thank you, Prabhu. And Mahesh Pandit Prabhu, would you like to appoint or invite our closing kirtan leader?
Yes, let's see. Radesh Prabhu.
I am off to collect the opulence of Hawaii in the form of coconuts. I'm running out the door.
No problem. Let's see who
Just
else
to
we
create
have.
envy among those who don't have access to such opulence.
Let's try Venkatesh.
Okay.
Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnaprishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayadvaita Swami Srivasadi Gauravinda Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस विराजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री 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 भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस विराजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्री भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी ठाकुर श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। सबसे करो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। राधा कृष्ण प्रभु गोपीनाथ श्याम राधा मुनि गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। मायापुर धाम की जय। जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा माई यमुना माई की जय। तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। सामवेद गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। ऑल ग्लोरीज एंड डिवोटीज, ऑल ग्लोरीज एंड डिवोटीज, ऑल ग्लोरीज to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Jai, Jai, Jai. Thank you, Venkatesh Prabhu. And thank you, everyone, for being here for Srimad Bhagavatam class. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj ki jai.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. Thank you, Kendra Prabhu.
Krishna.
Thanks to all. Hare Krishna.